The world needs all sectors, government, nonprofit, and the private sectors, to work together to solve challenges facing our global society. Although many governments, organizations, and companies that work to make a social impact may have good intentions and efforts, many times these entities do not make the changes nor solve the problems they so diligently work to address.
Welcome to the Empowerment Zone with Ramona Houston, where we zone in on Black and Brown relations and our journey to empowering our communities.
Have you ever wondered how can so much aid go to societies and communities, yet they remain the same? That is the question we are exploring today with Charles Warria. In essence, we all want to know, how do governments, nonprofits, and the private sector work together to create sustainable growth and development? If you are interested in social impact and solving some of the most pressing challenges facing our global society, today's conversation is for you. Charles Warria is a development economist who is passionate about endogenous growth and sustainable development in Africa. He has 20 years experience in development practice across various sectors, public, civil, and private. He firmly believes in building local capacity through mutual horizontal partnerships that create hybrid, innovative, and viable solutions to the challenges of our communities and societies. According to Charles, the shift from aid to trade through stronger production systems and value chains is the way to go. Charles is the Chief Operations Officer at iGov Africa and Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning Lead at the Kenya Catalytic Jobs Fund. So, hi, Charles. So, before we get started on this great topic of yours, which I can't really wait to discuss, can you give our audience a little bit of information about you so we can get to know you? Tell us about your background and your personal and professional trajectory.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Ramona. I am a 44-year-old Kenyan, married with 2 children. My daughter is 19 and my son is 8. I live and work here in Nairobi, even though I have lived and worked in other countries in the world, including Afghanistan. And it's been an amazing experience. I am a development economist, trained here in Africa, trained here in Nairobi, but I've had also trainings in other parts of the world. I've attended different courses on different other topics. I have 20 years experience in what I do as a development economist, with a particular focus on measuring impact. So I've been a practitioner for monitoring and evaluation and learning for the better part of my career, which has spanned into various sectors. I started way back in the NGO sector, primarily in health, and we worked with youth on behavior change for HIV prevention. I moved from there into a USAID program that supported local NGOs that worked in different sectors. And then from then I went into the private sector, and I have been in the private sector since then, but still working around social impact and how businesses can create impact, both financially, but also social, and how businesses impact communities, and not just for profits, but also seeing how transformation in improvement in livelihoods happen because of the success of businesses across this part of the world. So that's where I am in the space that I am right now. My job is exciting. I wake up every morning looking forward to go to work, and to see how small businesses are transforming and growing, but also how small businesses are impacting on smallholder producers. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that background about your work and your family. Thank you so much for joining me today. What time is it? It's here in Atlanta. It's 11 a.m. What time is it there in Nairobi, Kenya?
In Nairobi right now, it's 6:19 p.m.
Wow. 6 o'clock. Well, thank you so much for joining me during the dinner hour. I really,
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Yes. And I am really interested in your topic. As a social impact strategist, your work is about social impact and learning, measuring our own impact in our own way. And that's the route to sustainable growth and development. I love that topic. So can you talk about what you mean by social impact and what you mean by measuring our success, and what better ways we can do that as people who are doing good work in communities across the world?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit about why I left the NGO space.
Thank you.
And I left, I think I'd worked there for about 9-10 years. And 9-10 years, we worked in projects that were donor funded. And they were basically meant to address issues of health and poverty among the poorest of the poorest in this part of the world. And I had moments of frustration, mostly as an M&E officer, that you're tasked with following the implementation of the law frame and the indicators and reporting whether there's been a transformation among the communities that were being served. Is there increased incomes in their households? Is there reduced poverty in those households? And it was a constant challenge. And as I reflected on it, I kept asking myself, are we going about it the wrong way? Why isn't it changing? Why aren't people less poor than they were 10 years ago? What are we not getting? Why are communities not being able to be sustainable in terms of their livelihoods? Why can't they produce for their own? Why isn't agriculture working? Why aren't farms producing what farms should produce, in spite of interventions around helping them to get better seeds, helping them to get better breeds of goats and sheep and all. And in the end, it was a frustration, because I then began to realize that not just the local communities, but also the local NGOs and CBOs weren't sufficiently empowered to then track and measure what it is that they're looking for. So what does poverty mean in the context of the Maasai? What does poverty mean in the context of the Kikuyu? For example, these are two tribes in Kenya. What does poverty mean in the context of the Luo, which are fishermen? And what occurred to me is some of what we researchers contextualized as problems within communities were from the lenses of those researchers, and not necessarily from the community members themselves. People went as researchers and spoke to those people and asked them, how many meals do you eat in a day? And they said, I eat 1 meal a day. They didn't ask them, why do you eat 1 meal a day? Or what does that mean in your context to eat 1 meal a day? They said, look, global indicators said anybody who doesn't eat 3 meals a day is poor. So this particular household is poor. But when you look at it, the sociocultural formation of some of those communities is that we eat a heavy meal in the morning, then we go about our business because the farms are far removed. We're going to work in the farms the whole day. We'll snack on whatever is in there. Then we'll come back in the evening. And we'll eat something in the evening. But researchers weren't having enough time to engage in those deeper conversations with local communities on what the context means for them and how they have adapted or are adapting to those contexts. And therefore, where are the gaps they feel, and how can those gaps be addressed? And I think it's because of the rush. And here's where the rush was: that funders were looking to convince their mother countries to allocate them budgets to then do what they do in Africa. They have a short timeline to convince their parliaments and everybody else to allocate that money. So they need somebody to go brush up some quick information, use that information for programming, and then say, look, we're going to go into 1, 2, 3, 4 key priority areas. They call it key priority areas. And we're going to put funding into these key priority areas. Then they get the funding. Then they have to come back and then they'll select mostly international NGOs because they trust them with the money, and the international NGOs would look for certain local partners to help them to work. And that was one point of my frustration when I worked into some of those international programs, is that we dictated everything to the local CBO partners. So we told them, look, here's how you're going to do this. So you're going to distribute this, to this number of households. You're going to use these forms we give you to note how many households have received and what they have received. And this is all you're going to send to us, and that's it. We will analyze the data and then we will report the data where it's supposed to be reported. So all you got to do is receive, distribute, put in a form, give it back to us. Simple, clear, understood. And that has been going on for years. So those poor communities, all they see is donations coming. I don't even know why, but the donations are coming because somehow they have been classified as poor. And therefore, somebody has convinced a funder in Western countries to give money because these communities are poor. And for years, we haven't been able to build their capacity to produce, because over the years, what happened is they also played the game and they say, look, why should we look for something else? Those guys are going to bring the donations anyway. And we are poor, and all that. So I moved on to private sector. And what I realized differently is there is a transition between NGOs and the private sector. And this group is called the social enterprises. So social enterprises are playing a different kind of empowerment game. And what they're doing is saying, look, yes, community have problems, but guess what? We can solve those problems using affordable solutions. So we build a partnership. They become customers, we become service providers, and nobody gets anything for free, but we design it in a manner that it makes sense. They are willing to pay for it. They're articulating it as a problem. We see it as a problem. They see it as a problem. We ask them what would be a solution. We test the solution with them. If they're willing to pay for it and they're willing to accept the solution, then we form a partnership. I'll give you an example. So in some of the slums in Nairobi, there are companies that are partnered with the Nairobi Water Company to develop water ATMs for the poor households who live in those slums. For a long time, those poor households have not only lacked water, but the little water they were getting it from cartels. There's criminals who burst water pipes, redirect water into a certain corner and sell it very expensively because they know that they're the only providers. So you don't have anywhere else to go and get the water. So this company, went onto the ground, mingled with the residents of the slum, sought to understand the problem from their perspective. Why aren't you getting water? Because these cartels. Who are cartels? Why do you call them cartels? We call them cartels because somehow, for some reason, they look powerful and government can't deal with them, and we can't deal with them either. And if you raise up this issue, you get hurt. And then they ask the people, so what would you like? And they involve different stakeholders, and the water company said, look, we can't pipe water to every household in a slum because there's no access. The way the slums are built, the way the houses in the slums are built is you barely have access to the next house. So you can't do a piping. And they said, look, so if you have a solution that can work, we can partner. We have the water, we're the water company. We can take it to them. We can explore a pro-poor tariff that they can afford to pay. We can explore a pro-poor billing system, because they also realize that people in the slums, even if they had water, they want to pay for it on a monthly basis because they don't have a monthly pay. So some of them, the work that they do is casual labor. They get paid on Saturdays. So if you want them to pay for water bill, send them the bill on Saturday. As they do their budget and redistribute the money they got paid on that day, they might just pay you for the water. Otherwise, if you wait for the month, they're not going to pay you because they don't have a monthly pay. So the partnership with this company called Maji Milele. Maji is a Swahili word for water, and Milele is forever. So Maji Milele then partnered with Nairobi Water Company and the communities in the slums in Kibera and Mathare and created water ATMs. They have moved the cost of water from 20 Kenya shillings per 20-liter jerrycan to 2 shillings per 20-liter jerrycan. You know, households are not only just getting water cheaply, they have increased the quantities of water they use. You know, previously because of the cost, they would buy maybe 2 or 3 jerrycans. Now the minimum they buy is 5 jerrycans, because with 10 shillings, you get 5 20-liter jerrycans with 10 shillings. You know, previously you needed 100 shillings to get the same amount of water. And Majimilele is seeing a reduction in waterborne diseases, increase in hygiene, you know, in those households, you know, because communities are able to, but communities are paying. So they're not getting it for free, they're paying. And that's a solution that the social enterprises are now quickly emerging, that you don't solve problems by giving things for free, you know, because then you figure you package problems in your own lens and not their own lens. But if you involve them as a partnership, they help you see what sustainable solutions work for their own situations and how they can get involved. The communities in the slums in Kibera and in Madare and Mukuru are joining the partnership by paying the 2 shillings for the water. They've also joined the partnership by forming committees that guard the water ATMs so that people don't tamper with the water ATMs. Because if you tamper with the water ATMs, you're taking them back to the cartels. And they don't want to go back to the cartels. So they have formed neighborhood committees to make sure that the water ATMs are properly guarded, you know, and that there's no one tampering with anything about the ATMs. Now, those are solutions that sit between the NGO aid-driven and the private sector, you know, profit-driven. I sort of oscillate in between there. So in my current work, we're supporting SMEs, small enterprises that are providing affordable solutions to smallholders. So in different spaces, we have those that are working with women in retail and helping them to digitize their inventories, digitize the financial management systems, and use that to access credit from other formal financial institutions and grow their businesses. We have some who work with smallholder producers to help them access better markets using technology. So we have companies that are using blockchain. Blockchain is enabling to build confidence in supply chains so that whatever the farmers produce can be easily accepted in international markets, you know, and they're able to then get a prime price for that and get stable markets for those. So a lot of the work that I'm doing oscillates between, you know, reasonable profit making, but also providing sustainable solutions to poor households.
I love the way you laid this out in terms of the challenges of why when big companies or NGOs come into various countries, particularly you're talking specifically about Kenya, and why many things stay the same. It's because the way that the problem is being viewed is from an outside lens without necessarily understanding the people, the culture, and getting the solutions from the people themselves. So they come in and get these partners, but it's not a partnership. And so how you moved from working in that area and moved out because of your frustration, and how you saw the value of social enterprises, which is the partnership between the private sector and NGOs, where they identify the solution, but they also have the people to pay for the solution. And it ended up being impactful, because not only are you not dealing with the cartels in terms of water, which should be a basic source for everybody to have, you also brought down the cost of water and made water more accessible to people in the poorest communities. So in your work, my question to you is, how do you think that if philanthropists, funders want to come in and work with communities, and I think this can apply all over, not necessarily just in Kenya, but in the United States, what should they be doing in terms of developing partnerships and identifying solutions? What do you feel is the way the process should go?
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramona. That's a question that I have personally reflected on for a long time. One of the reasons why I saw funders opting to do things the way they do things is working with local communities takes time. It takes patience to go to the people and understand their issues and let them bring them. It takes time. It takes time, because they also take their time. They receive outsiders with relative suspicion. So why have you come? And what do you want? And what's your mission? And that those inherent suspicions among these local poor communities, because they feel over the time people have traded with their situation. People have come and collected information about them and went and designed programs that helped solve other things except their problems. And part of what they've seen in this part of the world is these associations. I don't like it. When NGO people, international NGO people go to meet community members in these big cars, they have big flashy cars, Land Cruisers. They have come. The entire village knows NGOs are here today, and they have come and they will go on and in the evening they go sleep in the nice hotels over there, So they have created this perception that NGO is all about flashy. It's not about felt needs. Now, every time I think about it, I think about how aid hasn't worked in this part of the world. Aid hasn't worked. What it has done is it has entrenched dependency. It has entrenched dependency and further entrenched poverty because people's capacities haven't been built. People's resilience haven't been built because they weren't doing it by themselves. They were waiting to receive relief food and donations, and freebies by NGOs, because NGOs wanted to tick the box in the log frame, that X number of people were supported with this donation and that donation, and therefore, if you put it on a big scale, this particular NGO is supporting hundreds of thousands of poor people by distributing this and that. But that hasn't translated into empowerment for those people because they were given fish, they were not shown how to fish. And over the decades, they have been receiving fish and it's easy. It's easy for NGO programming perspective. It is much easier to simply distribute fish as opposed to teaching people how to fish.
Yes.
Because you have to patiently wait for them to learn and then wait for them to do it. And that takes a longer time than the normal log frames of 4 or 5 years. But also it requires you to spend more time with them in the village, which NGO people don't do. They don't want to live in the village and wake up in the morning and walk with them. They want to live in the city like I do. And,
yes.
And occasionally, take a flight and go down to the village.
So true.
So when I think about it, what I explore is back in 2010, there was an article in the Harvard Business Review. It was called Hybrid Value Chains. And what the author talked about there was saying, look, therein lies a solution, a partnership between the nonprofit sector, the local communities, and the profit sector. The nonprofit sector, the local CBOs, they have a deeper understanding of the problems that the villages face, that the local communities face. The private sector have a better understanding of commercialization. So they have perfected the art of seeing business in every context. So there's something for every problem. There's something we can sell to solve it. Except their drive is not the impact, social impact. Their drive is the profit.
Yes.
So if they partner with the local NGOs, they find a middle ground in terms of this affordable solution. The same way for the water, that installation of ATMs and all has a commercial drive to it, but reducing of water tariffs, and a flexible billing system has a social angle to it, and that when drive for profit meets the drive for social impact, you have something beautiful in between that both sides enjoy. Affordable solutions that you merge the drive for profit with social impact, and what you have there is you're not giving anything for free, but you're providing affordable solutions that people can participate in and put their money in and buy. That way we are driving development in a sustainable manner as opposed to aid. If the local community populations can produce something that can be bought, is figuring out how can we help them produce it in a quality manner. How can we help them produce it efficiently? So I have seen private companies that partner with NGOs to bring improved seedlings to smaller producers, grafted seedlings, give them some trainings on organic farming so that they can produce organic stuff, and then set up processing plants around them so that they can then supply. Now, you're not giving them for free. You say, look, I'm going to buy whatever you produce, but I want you to produce quality. So I'm going to sell you one improved seedling at 50 shillings. The difference is that the tree or the crop that you have takes this long to mature and produces this quality. So I want to change your game. I want to give you this improved seedling that takes this short to mature and produces this quality. You see? And then my promise to you is I'm setting up my collection center right next to you. So I'm going to buy it as soon as you harvest it. I am buying it. What we have seen is a tripled motivation by smallholder farmers to go back into the farms, because someone has assured them that whatever effort they're going to put in a farm is going to yield. So they're putting their money to buy the 50 shilling seedlings, the 50 shillings still maturing within 2 to 3 years. They're able to get the crop, effort, including farm input by buying, and processing and selling. And that partnership is already working for hundreds of thousands of farmers, smallholder farmers who previously could not produce to feed their families. So what we're seeing is a transformation, a new kind of partnership. But I'm also willing to enable you to do your part. I'm willing to support you a little bit by bringing this improved seedlings. Ordinarily, this improved seedling would cost you 250 Kenya shillings. I'm going to sell it to you at 50 shillings because I know many of you are going to buy it. So I'm using economies of scale. Instead of selling to 5 farmers at 250, I'm going to sell to 50 farmers at 50. And I need you to convince your neighbor that it works. And I need you to convince your neighbor that it works. Now, companies are coming to that space and realizing that these were previously uncharted markets, unbroken markets that now are providing a much bigger viability, commercial viability for these companies, and translating into bigger outputs for smallholder farmers who previously, were just producing for their family, and lots of acres and acres of land were lying idle because they always kept debating, where am I going to sell it after I produce it? And because of that, because there was no answer to that question, they weren't producing.
I really like the way you explained this whole process of how, if you have a partnership with the community and have this hybrid business solution, that it can be good for the economy in those local communities, as well as good for the private sector, who are always looking for a profit, we many times we kind of condemn the private sector for the way they operate, but if they learn to transform the way they operate so that they're able to make a social impact and at the same time make a profit, it works for everybody, right?
Yeah,
and so I really like how you explained that. So for those African Americans and Latinos who are strategically placed in many of the NGOs and in government sector who makes the decisions, and also in the private sector, what do you suggest for them as we look at the Pan-African African experience, but not only that, looking at it from a worldview, but looking at it from a global society about how we can make a better impact on nations throughout the world as key decision makers in our respective institutions and organizations. What advice would you, or call to action, would you provide for us?
Thank you. Previously, I remember way back when President Harry Truman of the US was being inaugurated on the 20th of January, 1947, I think. He made that call to action, and he said, America must join the world in addressing these global problems, that are slowing down the development for poor countries. And the same is for everybody else who works with the so-called poor or communities that they want to uplift. The lens has been a top-down approach. And what I propose is a partnership, that see the opportunity that lies in rallying them into a partnership to find a common solution. Get them to speak, find time to hear their voices, and then ask them, what solution do you think would work in this case? And that solution is not to provide a freebie. That solution is an affordable solution. The key word there being affordability, and that affordability can be cascaded at different levels. But for a long time, we have packaged solutions for others. We have not sat with them to co-create solutions, because we have lacked the patience, because it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to sit with them, to have them to accept you, to have them to be and they can trust you with what is going on. But also, one of the things that I realize is every time I speak to local community members that have been classified as having problems, I am shocked at how they have had their own reflections about it, at how they have thought about solutions about it, except no one has ever given them any audience to talk about it.
And that's so true. We have in every single African-American community throughout the country, there is a place like under a tree, in a park, on the corner, where people gather and they talk about the issues of the day. And some of these people are educated, in terms of college. Some of them are uneducated, but they have these solutions. In Brownwood, where I'm from, a small town in Brownwood, Texas, we call it Smooth's living room. That's that it was the place where this local man, his name was Smooth. We called it Smooth's living room. But you can drive in any community throughout the country, African-American community throughout the country, and you will see a element of Smooth's living room, where, to your point, people have reflected on the issues of the day. They are many of them are well read. My grandfather was uneducated, but I think he had a 6th grade education, but he read the paper every day. They're well read. They have debated and philosophized on the issues, and they know the solutions. Absolutely. And so I totally agree with you on that point, is that the solutions exist within the local communities, whether you want to recognize it or not. And many times they go unrecognized because, to your point, we're so much in a rush that to get to the point. And we don't want to take the time, the energy, and the patience to listen and develop relationships and partnerships. So we end up making problems worse by making people dependent, right? Instead of making societies better through the work we do. So I'm in agreement that we must learn to listen to the people in the communities and hear their voices in terms of creating solutions to social challenges.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, if anybody wants to get in contact with you, can you share your information and let us know what they would need to do in order to reach you?
Yes, the quickest way to reach me is on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn address is charles.warria, and they will find me there. They can inbox me, they can chat me up. If they want personal information, I can then share a personal email with them. But I'm free and willing to talk to anyone who wants to talk to me further.
So Charles, we're eager to get your advice on college success. So could you tell our audience what college or colleges did you attend? What were your majors and your degrees? And then what is that strategy you would give students to ensure that they're successful in college?
Right. So I attended University of Nairobi for my first degree. Actually, my first degree and my master's at University of Nairobi, right here in Kenya. And I did political science and economics. And then I did a master's in development studies right here in the university. I have traveled to the US before to do a short course at Ohio State University. And I've also done other courses in South Africa and also in England. How did I make it through to university, and on all these courses? It's not easy, especially the undergrad. When you get to college in undergrad, there's a lot of peer influence on different kinds of things that are pulling you in different parts. And I have friends who took longer to finish college, or some of them did not complete. They dropped out because they didn't know how to balance peer pressure, growing up, and also focusing on your studies. What helps me, and also in terms of just picking the majors, because when you start in first year, there's a lot of subjects you're covering, but then as you progress to third year and fourth year and in undergrad, you're required to specialize and pick your majors, and that's a point of reflection. When you go back to Simon Sinek's words, start with the why. So what's your why? If you're going to pick economics, what's your why? Why economics, and how does it ground your philosophy? I picked economics because I saw it as the mother of everything. That it determines how and when people get to earn, how and when people get to make money, how and when decisions of economic growth are made. So I found that super amazing, that I'm going to be having knowledge on how economies work, how countries grow, how countries develop, and why some countries develop more than others, So it grounded my why. I built a curiosity around just wanting to every day know, what was the origin of all this thing, and how do you determine the cost of something? How do you determine that a pen is going to cost this much and not this much? How do you determine what house rent is going to cost in a neighborhood? Why some people live in some neighborhoods and some don't? And that was all grounded on economics. Why is the cost of bread the way it is? Who determines the cost of bread? So I had a bigger why, and it drove me every day. And it just, everything I read was contextualized. It made meaning to me because it drove me towards getting to understand this why. And my why just kept going, and it kept going. The more I read, the more my why kept growing, Yeah. But then I also matched it into political science because I realized at some point that politics determines economics, So I said, I want to understand what's all this politics,
Mm-hmm.
And the introduction we're given is that politics is the science of knowing who gets what, when, where, and how. I said, wow, I want to know that. I certainly want to know. and the more I read it, the more it built curiosity. I was like, wow, this is how it works. It gave me a totally different lens to see things every day. I would walk in campus and I'm like, these guys they have no clue. They have no clue what's going on. And my advice to people who want to join college is always start with the why.
Mhm.
Your why will drive you into different subjects. It could drive you into law. It could drive you into medicine. It could drive you into engineering. It could drive you to any field, that you feel, your why is driving you to, and that will build your curiosity. But without the why, you will struggle. And I saw my peers struggle. Some of them dropped out of school because they didn't build the why of everything that they did in campus. Without the why, and what the why does is the why builds your MQ, your meaning quotient. The why gives you the purpose to not just wake up to go to class every day, but to go to the library, to read beyond what the professor has provided. How do you do your part of research? It's the meaning quotient. How does this apply to me? How can I use this? How can I see its meaning in communities, in countries, in sectors? Without that meaning and things being meaningful to you, and wanting to draw meaning from the subjects that you're learning, students will always be struggling. They'll sit in class and twiddle and draw stuff, and as the professor is teaching, because they don't have the meaning is not alive. So they're sitting in this class maybe because their parents said so, that you go take that subject, is good for you. And a good number of students are doing it because the parents said so, because the parents felt it's a good thing. So they're doing it for the parent. I think the time is to stop doing something for someone else. Do it for you. You don't have to study medicine if you're not called to be a doctor. If you don't have passion for solving community health problems, don't be a doctor.
This is some great advice, and we really appreciate it. One, peer pressure, be aware of it, and don't necessarily fall into some of the trappings of peer pressure. Two, start with your why, which is actually the main thing he talked about, is starting with your why and knowing your MQ, your meaning quotient.
Yes.
And lastly, do for you. Do for you and not anybody else, because you are the only one that has to live with yourself. Absolutely. And no matter what major you go into or what career you go into, you want to go into that which will allow you to let your light shine and will allow you to live into your fullest potential. And other people's ideas about what you should or ought to be doing might be different from what your spirit has called you to do.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for that great advice. We love it and look forward to having you back on the Empowerment Zone.
Thank you, Dr. Ramona. Thank you very much.
A special thank you to the incredible team of the Empowerment Zone. Terry Gully, theme song, NADWorks, digital support, and of course, our featured guest.
If you enjoyed my podcast, please subscribe. We are on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Be sure to rate us on Apple Podcasts too. Thank you for your continued support.